My license is scheduled to be suspended that day. I'm like, uh-oh. Matt Farah from the Smoking Tire and I are friends. And I'm like, Matt, you want to do the Bullrun with me? I'm gonna buy a car. I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but I'll buy a car and we'll pick it up in Vegas and we'll drive it to Miami. And he's like, yeah, sure, I'm down. So he and I, we split the cost of the rally, and I go out and I'm like, oh, what do you think of the Cobra R? I've always liked the 2000 Cobra R. I had these model cars, like the 1/18th scale model cars. And the Cobra R was always one of those, yeah, that's pretty cool. And finally, I ran into an opportunity where I could buy one. And I found one in California. I had it inspected. And it went to an SVT dealer in Vegas. And I had them swap the brakes, change the fluids, do the whole 9 yards to make sure that car, I'm like, look, I'm picking this car up and I'm driving it across the country. So just make sure everything is right. They didn't know how to bleed the brakes properly. And that was sort of a problem. And they're like, we got it the best we could. And so I get into the parking lot and it was like, whoa, super spongy. The Cobra R has a difficult brake system to bleed. So they weren't able to bleed it very well. Luckily, as we went along for the first day or two, the air bubbles worked themselves out and the brake pedal got much better. But it was very, very sketchy. Legitimately worried if I was going to stop or hit the car in front of me. The Cobra R has no air conditioning. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty badass, Matt. That's a head turner right there. We got no air conditioning. That's pretty cool. But let's handle that situation, because when you open the windows when it's hot, it's like a hair dryer blowing on you. So it's not a very pleasant experience. So we contacted Cool Shirts and we got Cool Shirts, and I installed the Cool Shirts in the back. And let me just say, I would trade any air conditioning system on the planet for a Cool Shirt. We were driving 118 degrees, windows down, not an ounce of sweat dripping off of us. Well, the ice was cool and everything like that, but we were just loving life. The Cool Shirts were absolutely phenomenal. You're tethered to them, which is an interesting thing. And Matt screwed up by shutting the door while he was tethered and broke the connection. But Cool Shirts was very cool, and we duct taped it and it was leaking a little bit, but they overnighted him a new connection to the next hotel, so he survived the rest of the trip. But a tremendous amount of fun. I was so focused on getting the car, I didn't think to check on my license. And I remember I got a letter from the DMV at the time, and I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to suspend my license. Well, I'll get to that later. So as I'm going through my backpack and everything before the trip, it's 1:30 in Vegas, which is 3 hours behind East Coast time. And I see that my license is scheduled to be suspended that day. I'm like, uh-oh. So I call them up. I call the DMV. It's 1:30, so 4:30 DMV time. And dealing with people at the DMV or the post office is probably the last thing you ever want to do. I mean, there are so many ways I'd rather hurt myself than have to go interact with anyone at the DMV. I call them up. I'm like, hey, I got to talk to somebody. It says my license is going to be suspended today. I know it's late, and I just need to get an extension on this till for a week or 2 weeks. I'll come over and I want to appeal it. Sure enough, the person's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to put you through to another department. This is after I did the hold for 20 minutes and I get somebody on the phone. It's now 2:03, which is 5:03 East Coast time, and it was an East Coast DMV. And I'm like, look, guys, don't transfer me, because if you transfer me and something happens, I need my license. I'm stuck in the middle of the country. I'm driving on a road trip. I can't have a suspended license. And they're like, oh, well, we got to transfer. We can't help you. We got to transfer you to this department. Transfers it over and it disconnects. I was like, oh no, call back immediately. Hello, thank you for calling the DMV. Our offices are currently closed. And we're like, oh. So now I've got the car set up. I was so focused on everything else. I'm like, what am I going to do? The earliest I can now call to deal with this would be Monday. The rally starts tomorrow. And I was like, oh, well, I've got to just send it, I guess. I got to just drive slow. And the problem with the rallies is that you'll get pulled over just for having stickers. On that rally, I got pulled over in Texas for doing 46 and a 45. I can't modulate the throttle well enough on an analog speedometer to know whether I'm doing 46 or 45. So to get pulled over for that, you're getting pulled over for having stickers. And that was my big concern. So I was like, you know what, Matt, we're just going to chill for the first like 2 days. And we're just going to get to where we're going. We're not going to speed, which doesn't happen in the middle of the desert in a car that I just got that I was super excited to drive. And sure enough, we're driving, and the first day we're going into one of these checkpoints, and it's a little like slow 25-mile-an-hour road. We're doing like 32, 35, whatever it is. The dips and everything. Oh, this is fun. Cop coming the other way. Boom. Pulls us over. And like Matt's a big dude, so there's no way we're doing the Chinese switch like while the cop is like pulling behind us. We knew something that he didn't, which is that my license was suspended. And I had the letter, and I was going to be like, oh, here's the letter. It just got suspended, but I called it in. Did they not correct that? I don't know. Like, you know what? I'll let Matt drive. And that was our backup plan. But plan A was to talk our way out of it. And this guy comes up, and he's like sort of a dick, but we get him down a little bit. We're like, hey, what's going on? How are you? You got your papers? Oh, dude, these roads are amazing. How fast were we going? Oh, really? We're doing 35 and a 25. Sorry, we didn't know. Oh, those other guys coming through. That's why we're driving super slow. We're like literally like trying to obey the speed limit. That's why they're all probably done having lunch. We're just casually coming in, blah, 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 blah. And like every time the guys, we gave him the papers and he goes to walk away like, oh yeah, like we like, wait, real quick. Where do we go from here? And the guy's like, yeah, cool. Mustang, Cobra. Oh, yeah, it's a Cobra R. It's this and that. And the second time this guy's like, oh, let me just go run this. And he's like, yeah, it's cool. Like, I have a Mustang too. Oh, you have a Mustang? We love Mustangs. And it was some inconsequential like V8 Mustang. Like, dude, that is such a great car. And Matt was a big Fox body guy and everything. So he knew like the Fox bodies and the 93 and 98 Mustang. So he was able to just like lay it on. And then the guy's like, all right, let me just go run this real quick. Hey, every time he tried to walk away from the car, we just like kept the conversation going that we were like Mustang buddies and we're driving a Mustang and he's got a Mustang and he's like, all right, you know what? Just slow down, and hands the papers back through the window. And I was like, did that just happen? And it was probably one of my greatest talking my way out of a potential ticket, or even like anything that would happen. As soon as he types my stuff into the computer, like I'm done. It's game over at that point in time. So the fact that we were able to prevent him from even going to his car, it was a BS pullover anyway. It was 10 over the limit. But to prevent him from going to his car to run to find out my license was suspended was like sweat off my brow. We went to lunch, but we didn't really document that because I didn't want to have it ever come back to me. But it was a lot of fun. Driving the Cobra R was super fun. I did most of the driving. I got most of the tickets. Matt did some of the driving, and I don't think he got any tickets, but great co-pilot. We had a great time on that trip. A couple of days later, I got pulled over, and this is before I got anywhere with the DMV. And the cop ran my license. I'm like, I'm done. I'm going. Like, and came back, gave me a ticket. I was like, cool. Like, so after I got pulled over and got a ticket and did not get hauled away, I know it was definitely suspended in its home state. I don't know if it made its way through the system, but ultimately I'm like, look, if it's just only suspended there, hallelujah, I will happily go and drive this rally the rest of the way. And we did. We got a handful of tickets. We had a good time. The cool shirts were well worth it. I ultimately sold that car because a big problem is that the front splitter, which makes it look really cool, isn't functional. It breaks apart at speed. And like the first time I took it over to 100, the front end's bouncing up and down. I'm like, what is going on here? And it's because of that air dam is like flexible and everything like that. And it ended up breaking apart on me, and we ended up like bolting it back together and zip tying it and doing whatever we could to keep this thing together. And it was sometimes if you hit the wind just right, you're pretty stable. And then 130, you start bouncing. And for a car that does 155, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be bouncing up and down. So ultimately, we took it off, and the car was sort of flawless from there. But it then looks like a V6 Mustang. So ultimately, the fact that I couldn't drive it with the front splitter on, and I couldn't fix that solution, I wasn't going to go custom mold my own. I just sold the car. It actually turned out pretty well. I think maybe it cost me $3,000 to own that for a year or two, which is great. It was a fun trip. I wouldn't suggest going on a rally with a suspended license. I did that, and luckily I was able to live to tell the tale without going behind bars.
VINwiki is proud to be partnering with Mobile App Hero to continue changing the way we look at documenting automotive history. We're working with them to bring updates to our mobile and web-based app, so stay tuned to their social media and ours and keep telling the stories of all the cars you love.